to the western region. And also we talk about the history of Zhang Qian's journey to the western region. And you also have something to relate with the reign of the Emperor Wu Di of the Han Dynasty. So at that time, Zhang Qian was sent out to find out more information about this history. But he has to pass over the site, and he was caught by Xiongnu, and he stayed there for around 10 years, and later he came back. So in general, the storyline is the same. However, the objective of his journey was changed by the Buddhist. So all in all, the result is that from Zhang Qian's first mission to the western region, he embarked on the journey on this Silk Road. And by that time, we have connected the central areas to the western regions. So people always ask how this road is shaped. So actually, he is one of the predecessors who have embarked on the journey on this Silk Road. So let's go back to another site. This is one of the paintings from Mogao grottos. And so today we may see many national treasures. And today, together with other museums in China, the China National Silk Museum has presented tens of national treasures in this exhibition. So for example, let's take a look at this one. So this one is actually the terracotta warrior. And we have just talked about the story about Zhang Qian. So back in that time, Zhang Qian was served as an envoy, and he is aimed to fulfill his military mission. And for the journey they're embarking on is actually they're following a route for the envoy. So if we ask Zhang Qian himself what happened back in the old days, so maybe we can take a look on this terracotta warrior. So you can see this is a fleet of the horses. So for this terracotta warrior is actually excavated from the tomb of Han Emperor. At that time, many warriors were actually buried together with Han Emperor, and he was actually the father of the Han Emperor. So by looking at this terracotta warrior, you may have a general understanding of what this journey is like. For example, what clothes that Zhang Qian is wearing and what kinds of equipment or weapons he has been brought with his journey to the western region. You can see all of these horses are very tall. And for all of these equipment and accessories of the horses, they're all made from silk. And also for the saddles, you could see some of the pattern of the silk. So you will see this fleet of horses, they're quite luxurious. And also for the soldiers, they are wearing armors to embark on this journey to the western region. So for this terracotta warrior, it actually captures the situation back in Zhang Qian's first mission. So I have a question. When you look at these horses, so it seems like a little bit different from the horses that we see nowadays. Because you can see they're quite tall, they have short limbs, and also larger heads. So in general, the appearance of these horses is a little bit different from the horses we see nowadays. So what is the consideration? Is it because of the manufacturing of the terracotta warrior, or does that mean the horses in the Western Han is larger than the horses that we see nowadays? Well, even though I'm not an expert, so we have to consider many factors. So in general, it is just a design of the sculpture, but actually it is imitating the real horses back in the old days. And second, we all know that so after Zhang Qian embarked on the journey on the Silk Road, also he may brought back some of the horses from the western regions. So at the earlier stage, we may see some of the horses from the western region. After he came back from the western regions, he brought different varieties of the horses. And actually for the Emperor Wu Di, he's very fond of horses, and I believe during the mission of Zhang Qian, he must brought back some different varieties of the horses. So we all know that Xiongnu, they're very courageous and they have this fighting spirit on the war. And in the western regions, they have different varieties of horses. They're very good at fighting wars. However, if we look at the horses in the Central Plains, they're relevantly weaker than the horses from the western regions. So I believe Zhang Qian has made a lot of contribution because he introduced different breeds and different varieties of horses to the Central Plains. And later on, the Central Plains can breed stronger horses and also can help them with the battle. And because of those horses, it can contribute to the victory. So in the past, we all know that if we have a war, people are using chariots. And for the horses, they're actually carrying the chariots. But later on, people would like to fight when they're riding on the horses. So they say it's a change of the way of war. Right, let's continue our journey. On this side, we could see many bamboo slips from Han Dynasty. Well, actually, this is the wooden slip. So actually, this is the major way for people to capture the travel notes. Well, even though from time to time people may use silk to capture their notes, but it is quite expensive. That's why people are not using silk for writing. And people may use paper to draw a map. And when people are trying to capture some notes, they will not use a paper, they will use this kind of wooden slip or bamboo slip. So also we could see some of the routes are recorded on this bamboo and the wooden slips. Especially after Emperor Han win the battle. Once again, they established the Silk Road. In order to facilitate the transportation, they have to set up post stations. So some of the postmen, when they are passing by these areas, they can fill in some of their supplies and take a rest. And also people would like to take notes when they're staying at the post house. And during our archaeological investigation, we also found that the Xuanquan post house was well preserved. And we also found a lot of travel notes captured by the envoys from the bamboo slips and the wooden slips. And also we found different places and locations was captured by the Xuanquan post house. And for all of these bamboo slips, they also capture like the distance between different spaces. And after we pass by the Xuanquan post house, we can also find some different relics. And also we could see some of the records for like the envoys. And all of these has actually compiled the story of the Silk Road. Now from this map, you could see different places captured by the Xuanquan post house. And all of these small places actually constitute the Silk Road. So by looking at all of these places, what we would say by looking at all of these post houses, it actually captures the route of the envoy. So in this one, it actually talk about the situation of Lowland Post House, and it says that over 200 people have been staying in the post house. And for another places, 470 people had staying there. And in this place, they're saying not only the envoys passing by these post houses, and they also would like to receive some of their guests in this post house. So you could see a large flow of population in these different post houses. And for example, you could see envoys are actually sent from different regions, so we could say from different countries. Now you could see very frequent exchanges between the envoys on the Silk Road. So once again, we can take a look at the bamboo slip. And also we talk about the history and the stories of Dunhuang. And actually for Dunhuang, it's very important places for the Silk Road. So for the two major control borders, they are actually located inside of Dunhuang, meaning that if you have ever exited these control points, you're actually exiting the emperor. And when you're looking at this route again, you can see there are many small states back in that time. For example, 小院、精绝。And also right now you can see there are many ancient towns built around these small places. And also some of the small states are actually ruled by female emperor. So for these small places, they actually are small states and countries back in the old days. And By looking at all of these, you can have a general understanding of the diplomacy back in the old days. And also for this like Xuanquan post house and some of the lacquered wood potteries, firm silk, paper, and other articles are unearthed, meaning that people were doing a lot of transactions. And also we could tell that many envoys have made frequent visits with each other. So that is to say, Silk Road was actually formally established after Zhang Quan's journey to the western region. So here I can see a wooden horse. So it is very difficult to preserve a wooden article. We could found some of these relics can be preserved in Xinjiang, and also some of these wooden carvings can be discovered from Gansu province. So you could see from this one, it is very strong horse, and you can see the pattern of the silk that is put on the saddle. It is a very exquisite design of the saddle. So back in that time, people were starting to put on a lot of decorations on the horse. Also back in the old days, there is also a tradition. So that is the specification from marriage. So back in that time, many small countries, they would like to establish relations with the neighboring countries through marriage. So that is to say, for the Han Dynasty, they would marry their daughters of the imperial family to the rulers of the minority groups. So that is one way of conducting the diplomacy and also maintaining very sound relations between different nations or minority groups. And this time in our exhibition, we also display some paintings that captures the pacification through marriage. For example, this one is the painting of Cai Wenji returns to her motherland. And we all know that Wenji, she was sent to Xiongnu back in the Eastern Han Dynasty. And later on, between the BC 1115 year and to 1234 year in the dynasty of Jin, and the incumbent emperor would like to bring Cai Wenji back to her motherland. So for this painting, it actually captured the situation when Cai Wenji returns to Han Dynasty. So right now, this piece of artwork was collected in the Jilin province, the museums. So if you look at these paintings in details, you could see some people are actually sending Cai Wenji, and also some people on the other side, they're actually welcoming and receiving Wenji back to her homeland. You can see she is riding a horse. And also you could see these people are actually embarking on their journey during sunny days. If you look at the details, it's very exquisite. You can even tell the expressions of Wenji.
对他来了，所以在这幅画呢，是一个就反映了，就是说中国当时的内地跟北方
So for these
之
paintings,
间的一种联络的情况，也算
it actually captures the policy of the pacification through marriage,
使者这样一个走出
and also talks about
其实我们能看到这张
the cultural exchanges
经过
between
这么
different
多年
grasslands.
然后我们说金人所画，然后一直到现在，这个1000多年历
You
史。
see, this painting have been gone past over thousands of years, but still it is well preserved.
当时流散到民间之后呢，
I believe it is not an easy task to preserve this painting.
甚至把它当作是挡灰尘那块布。 挂在那边，就在灶头边上。
When we first found this painting, it is not well protected.
发现这幅画的时
And
候，
when
其实是
back in the 60s, when our experts discovered this painting, and they have kept these paintings in a museum, and also through minor restoration of the painting, now the condition is much improved.
然后也有一幅这个同样题材的这样一幅图画，同样也是以蔡文姬。
And on the other side, there's also another painting talking about the story of the pacification through marriage. So this is actually the painting of the 18 songs of the Nomad Flute.
接回来的时候，在这个时候呢，蔡文姬呢，其实他因为那边已经生了小孩。
So for this painting, it talks about when Cai Wenji is returning to her homeland. At that time, she already had children, so she was very struggled whether or not to come back to her homeland. So if we look at the paintings of the 18 songs of a Nomad Flute, it actually captures the whole story about Cai Wenji.
结婚了。
So at the beginning, it captures when Wenji was sent to Xiongnu, and then how she settled, and how she gave birth to her children. However, she always missed her homeland. So looking at this one, you could see she was staring to the sky, and also thinking about her family. So for this painting, it captures all the mental changes of Cai Wenji. And the last one, it captures Cai Wenji's mental status when she knew she's about to return to her
像
homeland.
之前我们看到那是文物啊，然后很珍贵，它是很容易理解的。然后像这两幅画啊，然后我们说古人画
So
的
one
画
of our
非常
viewers asked, but we have just seen some of the relics, and now we're seeing some of the paintings.
这两幅画我们就说是类似于像镇馆之宝
So her
一样
question
的这样的
is,
画作，而有一些其他的画可能就没
why
有
we think these two paintings is of paramount importance to the museum, because we all know there were many paintings discovered back in the old days.
但是都是配合我们展览的主题来做的，所以我们在这个展览里面想到了丝绸之路
So for this
它的
time, we
几个阶段
actually selected a series of paintings that fit into
这样，所以这两幅
the
画
theme of this exhibition.
第二个就是说，如果说这个画的重要性
So for these
或者
two
它的珍贵
paintings,
性
it
对
actually
这个呢就有
echoes
很多的那个
with
评判的
our
标准
theme,
但是
the
作为
before
文物
and
来说，我
after
们一般
the
来说
Richthofen.
所有的文物它都有3个基本的价值，一个呢我们叫科学价值。
And
就是
for
说
the
它
cultural
的艺
relics,
术价值
we have
还有
three
一个呢叫
values.
历史价值。
The
那么
fourth value is
作为一
about the
幅画，
scientific
它更多
value,
的
and
是
also the
一个
second,
艺术
the
品。
artistic
首先我们觉得
value.
它是一个艺术品的这个艺术价值。就是
And
它
for
画
these
得
paintings,
怎么样
first we will
那么很多的
consider
艺
these
术
two
家有名的
paintings
艺术
as a
家
piece
会
of
对它
art.
就是画得特别好、特别精美、特别真实等等情况，这是一方面的。
So for many artists, they can paint very nice paintings, very exquisite capture of the portraits. However, for these two paintings, they also have historic significance, because it captures the histories back in the Han Dynasty.
说是一个非常重要的。
For example, this one, the painting of Cai Wenji returns to
艺术经常会
her
反映一些
homeland.
比较
So I think
悲伤
this
伤感
topic
的那种
is very
不是
unique.
欢天喜地就是艺术，就是像这种就是特别感人的一些艺术，他们都会。
So for
那
this
么这些
piece of
画主要
art,
出现在什
I
么时候
would
呢？
say this is
就在
very
宋代
touching
的
and
时候
moving
就
and very
出现了大
emotional.
批为什么那个时候出现？就是因为北宋我们的灭亡。
In Song Dynasty,
皇帝
there were many
皇后
paintings
很多人都被掳到北方去。那么那个时候就是
extricated,
特别有一
and
些
because
南
at
北来
that
往的
time
人，他们
many
也会有
people
这种
are actually
这种伤
freed
感，
to
对，还有很多人就会
the
盼他
southern
们回来
part.
什么时候能回来？
So for some
那
of
个时
the
候就出现
paintings,
了
they
一大
actually
批的
capture the
这
moment
种
of
机会
departures
就
and
这样的题
sadness
材，其实还不
of
光
the
是这样，
departure.
所以它的这个历史意义就
So for
就
this
不一样
one,
另外呢，
it
在
vividly
中原
captures
保
the
存下来的
situation
这个时
of
间里面
Wenji
这幅
returns to her
画
motherland and
作
also
就是非常的一个精美。
the
然后
whole
它的反映
storyline
的这个历史价值呢
of
也
her
很
journey
真实。比如
to
说，
Han
我们
and
就看
Xiongnu.
它的这个服装，
So
看
it
它的法式，都可以
reveals the
看到
history
当时的那个。其实我们说的匈奴，
of the
在
era.
金代、宋代的人，就他们也没看到过匈奴的，但是这些
By
形
looking
象
at
哪里来的？
her clothes and
其实
also
就是当时人
her
们所理
hairs,
解的这个北方。
it actually
其实他们的人
represented
物这些人物
one
画的
age
都
of
是
the time.
契丹人的形象，就是北方。他说匈奴人，其实他的形象是这个契丹人的形象。你像，对对对。
So you could see there were many
宋人
people accompanying
说匈奴
Wenji
他不知道
going back
但
to
他
her
看到过的
homeland.
就是
So
说
if you
在
look
南
at
宋
their
的时候他的契
expressions
丹
and
派
their
契丹是北宋的时候
costumes, you could
那么还
see
有他
they're
的这个服
actually
装，比如
people
说是
from
这个
Xiongnu.
这个文姬归汉的时候，他上面带了一个云肩，这是中国历史上最早出现云肩的这么一个是一幅绘画作品。就它的
And also, if you
云肩
look at the
一般来说
costume
都
of
说
Cai
是
Wenji,
到元代才有，但是这对，就是云肩。
she is also
小鼻子
wearing
啊什么之类的，就是在肩
a
肩
cape.
的一个东西，而且它里面还穿了一件
and this is
衣服
also a
叫
traditional costume
果肚。
of
果肚
Han
那个衣服呢
Dynasty.
就是从金代开始的，是在那个中间的那个地方，那个对不太看得清楚。但是
So
就
if
是
you
说
look
它
at
的这个
what
历史价值，
what
它
she
有
was
很多
wearing,
我们研究历史、研究服装史、研究这个
you could
很
see
多历
this
史方面的
painting
这个
have
意义
very
所以这些加
important
起来我们
historic
再决定
significance.
这件东西到底是不是真。另外，当然这件东西进过宫，又出过宫，这些都是它的历史。
And also for this painting, it used to be stored in the
又
imperial
被人们
house,
找到了，还保
and
存了
later on,
基本
this
上
painting was
非常完好
transferred
就
to
是
the
这种稀
museums.
有性也是决定它的那个。你如果很多的东西，
It is
那么
quite rare
它
to
的稀有
discover
程度
paintings like
就没
this.
那么高。所以
So
决定一
that's
件
why
文
we
物的
think
这个
this
珍
one
贵与否
is very
这样的高低
important
与否，它有
in
很
the
多的方
museum.
面
This
的
is
考量。
very treasures precious
好，
for
不
the
知道这
Chinese
个赵
nation.
馆长的这个回答是不是满足我们刚才这位网友的一个提问？那接下来我们先放一
I
段
believe
小小的短片
Curator Zhao
然
has
后
already
让大家
answered
再
the
重
question.
新回顾一下我们这个展览的
So
整个
first,
这样
let's
的
take a
过程。
short break to have a general review of this exhibition.
央视新闻的各位网友，大家好。如果说此时此刻您刚刚是打开
Dear
我们
viewers,
央视新闻的客户端，
good morning. If you just tune in,
那么您此刻正在收看到的是由我总台央视记者高瑶带您一起
now
来
you're
看
watching our live streaming
展
at the China National Silk Museum. And today we bring you the exhibition about the Silk Roads before and after Richthofen. And always people asking how these Silk roads are shaped. And we have just talked about these roads. The Silk Road is actually shaped by the envoys and the soldiers. And also people are sending envoys and the monks on the road. So that would say that for this first stage of the Silk Road, these people are shaping the road. And for example, we talk about the well-known Mr. Zhang Qian, and also we talk about the female envoys and Cai Wenji, who are going back and forth from the Silk Road, from the pacification of marriage. And on this section, you could see there were many Buddhas exhibited here, and for some of the Buddha, they actually unearthed from the Northern Wei Dynasty, and also for some of the Buddha, they're coming from the Western regions, and some of them are coming from India. So who shaped the Silk Road? So first, we talk about the envoys, and also the second stage, we would like to talk about the monks and the missionaries. And also, merchants are contributing in shaping the Silk Road. With the development of the economy, with the changes of the items, and we have more merchants embarked on the journey between the east and the west. And the merchants are also help to shape the Silk Road.
非常有名的一位我们说那时候的就是航海家叫苏莱曼，然后他走出的这样的一条海上的丝绸之路。
So, for example,
我们看路上，然后当时的很多的国家
8th century, we have this maritime Silk Road.
第三类走出
And many merchants are actually embarked on this maritime Silk Road.
商人是逐利的然后再往下发展，第四类人群就是传教士。
For the
我们说
merchants,
现在世界上
we
有
also have
三大宗教
missionaries who help
基督
to
教、伊斯
shape
兰教佛教，
the
然
Silk
后
Road.
到
So we all know there
这
were
个
three major
明朝
religions in the
这样的
world:
一
the
个时候
Buddhism,
中
Christianity,
国
and
和国外之间的交流也在不断的发展，而且随着国外这个大航海时代，它的
And
一个
back in the Yuan
发展之后
Dynasty,
他们
there were
拥有了
also
更加
frequent
强
exchanges
大的
between the
装备
East and the
和
West.
工具交通工具，然后可以横行于海上。
And at that time, we have a much better transportation, and people can embark the journey
马可波罗
on
的
the
来
maritime.
华他们
So we all know that
中
Marco
国将整
Polo
个中国的
and
风土人情介绍到了西方然后让大家了
also
解了
Martil Richard also came
遥
to
远的
China.
东
They
方
come
究竟是
here,
一个什么样子的
also bring the
然后其实
Western
在这
culture
个阶段我们也
into
能看出一个特点，
China.
就是以前我们说丝绸之路可能是中国在汉朝的时候，当时的整个经
So
济
in
文
the
化发展
past,
是
we
比较强大
always
的
talk
说
about
是
the Silk
中国
Road,
很多的使者往
the
外走
transactions
然
on
后
the
到
Silk
了
Road
明朝大航海时代之
in the
后
old days,
很多都是
and
国外的这样的一些
many envoys
人
from China,
然后
they
来到
actually
了
embark on the
他们
road
比较陌生
to
的
have
东
the
方
Western
其实也能看到
exchanges.
随着文明不断
Actually,
的发
up
展
to Yuan Dynasty, with
文
the
明程度越
development
高的
of
国
the
家，他们对
transportation
于未
means
知的领
many
域
Western
对于未
envoys
知的土地的这样的
they
一
are
种渴
coming
求
to China
会
for
更加的渴望
exploration.
好，接下来我们
This
看这
also
个
shows
地
the
图
aspiration for
非
knowledge.
常的壮观，这也是我们所有人在历史课
Now
本
we
当
have
中非常熟悉的一张图
come to
昆于万国
a
全图，
map.
这应该算是最
So
早
that
的
is
世界
the
地图了吧
Great Universal Geographic Map. I would say this is the earliest world map.
这个世界地图来说，它是最早的记录，因为利玛窦他在
Indeed, this great universal geographic map was
澳门，后来
created
83年的时候可以到了大陆，到了大陆或者他
by
要跟很
Matthew
多的中国
Richard.
人交往，那么中国人交往的时候，他拿什么东西来
So
告
when
诉
he
中国人
visited
他来自哪里，他是怎么样的人？
China, he had to have a lot of communication with
一开始
local
他带了
people.
书来，然后呢，
So in order to explain where he came
很有
from,
兴趣，哎，
he
这个世界
prepared
原来
this
是这么大
universal
所以呢
geographic
他
map.
开始就把
And many
世界
people are
画出来
very curious
特别
and
是在画的时候
interested
呢，他也
about
跟
this
中国
map.
的学者合作，把中文就是
And when
画
he's
在
drawing
记在
this
世界
geographic
地图里
map,
面。然后
he's
呢，
working
他又把
together
中国
with
放在了
Chinese
世界
scholars.
地图的中心，所以这幅画
And you
呢
could see
是现在收藏在南京
for
博物
this
院
map, China is
一个
at
彩绘
the
本的那个
central
世界地图。
part.
这个彩绘本里面呢，我们
Now,
可以
this
看到
great
是整个
universal
跟
geographic
今天的
map
世界地
was
图
collected in the
从
Nanjing
大的
Museum.
格局上面来说
So if you
没有
look
太
at
大的区
closer
别
on this geographic map,
中间呢应该是
it's
太
very
平洋
similar
中
to
国
the
呢
world
差
map
不多
we
就是
see
在这个位
today.
置上面。
In the
我们可以
middle part
看
is
到
the Pacific
很多中国的
Ocean,
地名，
and
特
China
别是
is
像我们
on
浙江啊、
the
福建
central
啊、
part.
山东啊、沿海。
And from
而
this
且
map,
当
you
时
could
这
see
个海呢
some of
就
the
叫大明
places,
海，就是不
especially
是
some coastal cities
去
in
当时
this
对
map.
亚洲已经叫
And for
亚
this
细亚，
sea, they call
跟
it
欧
the
洲
Daming
那些
Sea.
都跟今天的名字呢没有很大的区别。那么利玛窦呢，在
And
这
for
幅
some
画上
European
面
countries,
做
you
了
could see the
很多的
names
记录
remain the
解释
same.
了这个世界地图的
For
地
Matthew
理的一些
Ritchie,
原理。这个
he
世界
done a
地
lot
图的
of
画
work
法
in
而
this
且怎
great
么画，另
universal
外还有
geographic
很多
map.
中国的
He
学
made a
者
lot of
特别是
explanations
跟他
about the
合作的
logic
这
behind
个
this
制造
geographic
是
map.
他也有一段文字写在这里。这李制造就是我们浙江杭州人，
Especially, he worked together with many Chinese scholars in refining this map back in 1600.
给他反复的画，特别呢，李制造他还把世界地图呢刻板、雕版印
He
刷
worked closely with one of the scholars, Zhi Zhao of
他
China.
是传播了很多的世界地图，但是真正留到今天的就不多。这幅地图呢，当时可能是在
In 1500 and 1600 years, there are many versions
1922年的时候被
of
发现
global map.
然后被发
However,
现的
this
时候呢
one
就收
is the
录到
most significant
保
one.
存到今天。所以这幅画也是非常非常
And
珍
in
贵。
around 1600, we discovered this great universal geographic map,
而且我们
and
发现
later we
这张
collected
地图上不
into
仅
the
画了
Nanjing
我们
Museum.
熟悉的几个大洲大陆、岛屿，还有很多的动物。
So you could see from this geographic map there were many continents, and also you could see some of the featured animals in different continents.
对对对对对。
有的好像是真的，有的可能也不一定。
Well, for some of the animals, I can barely
这
recognize
感觉就像
this.
麒麟是吧？鳄鱼、麒麟。
For example, this
这
one
这是
is like curing and
海
cocktails,
豚吗？类似。大象
crocodiles,
这个感
and
觉就像
what is
神
this
兽一
one?
样
I'm not sure. And
犀牛、
maybe I could see some divine
金枪
beast
鱼，还有各种各样的
shops.
看得出来是各个国家的那种不一样的。
And also you could see all kinds of vessels, and vessels from different countries in different shapes.
东西方的交流，因为我们刚才看到就是有几个过程嘛，从使者到僧侣
So we just
朝
talk
圣
about the
从
exchanges
佛教为主
between the East
然
and
后
the
是商
West.
人，到这里呢是基督教，
And we
基督教
have
呢
envoys,
更多的是
and
他们
also
过
we
来
have
是基督
some
教的过来也有
religious
这个过程
people.
从唐代的时候，他们也到了长安，后来元代的时候，那么到了这个明清的
And
时候，
for
就是他
the
们传教士过来就是特
Christian
别多。
Christianity actually first introduced into the Han Dynasty in China. So they preach, and also they brought a lot of
所以到这个时候呢，
Western
中西方的那个
knowledge
文化
to
交流
China.
就达到了一个新的一个水平，因为大家认识就是越来越
So I
广
would
越来
say
越
it's
浅
back in
前
that
面
time.
光是一个
It
一些
is very
货物
important for
等等
such
一些
kind of
不光
exchanges
是一个
because
宗
it
教
can
相对来
bring
说大家关
some
注的
new
点比较
knowledge
窄
and new
但是这种
technology
科学技
to
术就是
China,
以
and
人类
also
的
some of
工
the
具
new
大家要认识
religions.
世界
And
要
all
发
of
展
this will
我
help
们都需
to
要科学
develop
技术所以这一
our
块呢
nation,
觉
and
得是
at the
把
same
丝绸
time,
之路
we
东西
may
方文
also
化交流 就是推到了一
gave
个
them some of
非常
our
新的一个阶段
traditions, and
所
also
以这也
these
就是
people
我们
will
整个
brought
丝
back
绸
the
之路
Chinese
其实讲
civilization
的
back
前
to
面第
their
一
own
个单
country.
元呢讲的就是这个东西方 文化交流在历史上的一个发展过程。
So for the Silk Road, on the first part, we talk about the historic development between the relations between the East and the West, and when it comes to Yuan Dynasty, and the situation is getting much improved. So, if I would like to answer the first question, who shaped the road? I would say three major type of people shaped the road. So there are the envoys, and also there are the merchants and the missionaries. So I would say it is not just one group of people who can shape the road. By having this exhibition, we can have a better understanding about the formation of the Silk Road. And that's why we divided this exhibition into 4 parts and 4 sections, so you could have a better understanding about the history of the Silk Road. So now we enter the second section, that is who named the Silk Road. So right now people are very familiar about the concept of the Silk Road, but who named the Silk Road at the first place? So when we come to this section, first we found many books, and also I found a very famous book. For example, the Jules Verne's novel Around the World in 80 Days. So all of these are popular books. So actually, back in the Western industrial society, the 19th century was a period of global exploration. And many people are writing books about the global trips. So during that time, and one man stood out from others, especially in naming the Silk Road. So that is the Richthofen. Because in the late 19th century, people were very interested about the global travel. So against that background, there are many historians and also many geographers. They travel a long way to the eastern part. So Richthofen is one of them. He's a German geographer. Because altogether he traveled in 7 times in China. After his travel, he wrote a book named China. So there were 5 chapters of his book.
这个5卷本里面的第1卷，对，它其实在里面呢就讲述了中国地理的一个大的情况。在这里面呢，它
For the first chapter, he talks about the general situation about the geological surveys in China.
他们记载的关于中国的一些地理情况。
While he's not using the route he passed by, and also he used some of the routes that has been embarked by the ancient Greek.
Ceres 就是养蚕的国家。那么他说，去往这个 Ceres 这个国家的那条路，其实就是贸易丝绸的一条路。那么他把这条路呢，
So at that time, he first proposed the concept of the Silk Road. When he talked about the Silk Road, he called the transportation routes mainly for Silk Road between the Han Dynasty of China and the south and west of Central Asia as well as India. Even though these definitions are still accidental to some extent, but in the 9th century and the early 20th century, many foreign expeditions and the later Sino-Swedish scientific expedition to the northwestern province of China conducted many archaeological explorations in the western region. And also they're focusing on the Tario Basin. So actually that is the first time when Richthofen proposed the concept of Silk Road. And after several times of investigations, survey, and this Silk Road is substantiated and approved. So here you can see there are many documentations about Richthofen and how he proposed this Silk Road. As I've just said, he done 7 times of geological investigations. He traveled almost half of China, around like 13 provinces. He left a lot of photos, maps, and travel notes. When he came back, when he started to write the book China, he proposed the transportation routes for silk trade as the Silk Road. So at the beginning, even though the definition is accidental, but still it has a further influence to the scholars nowadays. So right now, many people are studying how the Silk Road is proposed and how the Silk Road is established. And the people are also studying in different languages. They want to understand whether all of this information are inconsistent. So thanks to Richthofen's naming of Silk Road, so as we just said, there were many historians studying on this road. They also proposed different names, but with different expeditions, we all recognize that Silk Road is the most appropriate name for this road. And because in the ancient Greek, they're also referring China to the country of Ceres. And people are saying, so for Silk Road is a very appropriate name to capture the transportation routes from the western region to China. And also particularly, I would like to mention Richthofen's student, Stephen Hardy. He had never came to the Silk Road. However, he wrote a survey on the Silk Road. And also this Silk Road made decisive contributions and carried forward the Silk Road theory. And in early 90s, and his students came to the northern western part of China to further understand the establishment of Silk Road. So in this group of pictures, it captures some of the photos on Richthofen student Hardy's expedition. You could see he's riding camels and also trying to explore the Silk Road. So now you could see at that time they're not familiar with the geographic conditions. It's very difficult for them to continue on this journey. And in the end, they're able to find the source of water, and the whole group can survive and continue to conduct the expedition. And at the beginning, He studied the geographical conditions in China, and he discovered the lowland ancient town. And later on, he worked together with the Chinese team and formed a Sino-Swedish scientific expedition to the northwestern province of China. So during their archaeological explorations, they also find out some of the documentation about lowland, and that's how the lowland ancient town was discovered by this Sino-Swedish scientific expedition team. So for this book, it's actually written by Richthofen students, and for the other side is the English translation of the book. And for the first book, it's actually more academic, but for this one, he uses a common language to describe his story about the expedition. And he also used the term the Silk Road in his book. And when he came back to his nation, he also delivered a lot of lectures and speeches talking about his journey to the northwestern provinces of China. He also mentioned the Silk Road in his speeches. But sometimes people were saying during the history they may damage some of the relics, but that is another version of the story. And also another geographer entered into China from India. And he also conducted a lot of expeditions in different provinces of China and to find out the origin of the Silk Road. And for this British scholar, after he collected all of this information, he also tried to capture all of his notes in a book. And also some of his documentations were collected in the British National Museum. So because this scholar entered into China from India, he first visited Hetian. And also he found many remaining relics of the Silk Road. He first visited lowland, and also he visited Dunhuang. And also found many unearthed relics from Dunhuang grottos. So you could see for their camel teams, they are also carrying some of the relics that has been unearthed from grottos. And also France also conducted a lot of expedition about the Silk Road. As he have more knowledge about the Silk Road, you could see that after he visited Dunhuang, he also collected some of the relics from the Dunhuang grottos. So all of these are foreign explorers. So this is just some stories about this archaeological expedition and exploration. However, these people, when they're coming back to their countries, they excavate and collect ancient cultural relics and documents. This will also conducive to pass the spirit of the Silk Road and also to popularize the Silk Road in Western regions.
大量的丝绸都到了那个地方，这就是很说明问题。在敦煌藏经洞里面
So here we have many collection books, and also we found many silk excavated from Dunhuang city.
最后呢，就觉得确实在这个地方丝绸之路是对的。
And with their expedition, they all recognized that this road should be called Silk Road, because indeed, in addition to some of the relics discovered, they can also discover many silk from these places, and that is the most important commodity. So this is the stage 2 about the Silk Road, especially with the entry of the foreign explorers. When these people come into here, we do observe a lot of the new technologies from the western side.
在遥远的沙漠那里面，还有一个叫石室，就是一个石头的一个洞窟，里面居然出土了几千年，将近1000年左右之前的那个。
And also, people found a stone cave in Xinjiang.
非常震惊，所以后来中国学者也
In such an ancient stone, many collection books were discovered.
考古的时候呢，我们就开始提出要做中瑞合作的。
So that's why later on, we proposed the idea to form a Sino-Swedish scientific expedition group. So now you could see there's a photo for all the people involved in this expedition group. We have photographers, and also we have some leaders for this expedition team. So for some of them, they're archaeologists, and also we have some natural scientists, and also we have some historians. So this is a multidiscipline expedition. So start from this stage, the Chinese scholars together with the Western scholars, they're doing many surveys in the northern western part of China. So here you could see there was some travel notes. The diaries that has been captured by this expedition team. Also, we could see some of the mapping documents. They not only capture documentations, and for example, some people they're actually doing some paintings to capture the geological conditions during the expedition. So for some of these photos, they can pictures, I would say, can substitute some of the photos. For example, for this one, what we call the Black Town, it also captured the situation back then. And for another picture was drawn by Huang Wenbi. It captures some of the tombs back in 4,000 and 5,000 years ago.
所以丝绸其实还没有到这个地方。但是呢，他们
So at that time, you could see people are wearing sweaters. They're not wearing silk.
因为在他们这个地方，他们
But still, by looking at the picture, you could see an exchange between the East and the West.
所以他的考察里面后来有
Because at that time, they found the wheat and different agricultural products very interesting.
考古报告
And there were
他们
many
的
achievements.
日记都有他们的这个记录。
So you could see there were some diaries,
他们翻译的当时的一些书籍。
the archaeology
考古这一块来说
investigations,
像黄文璧
and also some translated versions of their books.
就是在楼兰那个地方的这个考古，这是黄文璧的。新疆考古
For example,
发掘
this
报
one
告
is the
黄文璧当时虚有文献
archaeological
这都是中
notes
国学者
in Lowland.
一个工作
So all in all, these are academic reports that has been generated by
这一
Chinese
就是
scholars.
另外一个非常重要的点，就是敦煌。敦煌我们所知道，当敦煌藏经洞的
And
东西
Dunhuang is also a very important place for the
这地方还有
expedition.
重要的东西，所以当时的政府就马上下令把藏经洞保留下来的所有东西全部运到北京。后来呢，在
Because from the early expeditions,
设立了敦煌
many
最早敦煌
treasures
研究所，
relics
常
were
书鸿
unearthed.
作为第一任的所长，在敦煌开始。
And Mogao Grotto was also established later on, and they started to preserve cultural relics in Dunhuang.
一个一个洞窟要去记录它的这个洞窟里面的情
So
况，有佛像
there were many
有画
caves
有
in
各种
Dunhuang, so you could see for all of these books and the travel notes,
一个洞窟内
it also records some of the situation of different caves.
在那么艰苦的条件下面进行工作，所以这个开拓了我们丝绸之路这
So
个
we
学
can
问。
see at that time the situation is very tough, but still people are conducting a lot of studies of
我
Dunhuang.
们这个阶段，
是的
我们可以看到，从里希呼芬到
So for all of these investigations, they are involving many fields.
基本上
For
是
example, there may be
就是在
some
学术的层面。
philosophical and social science such as religion, art, history, geographic, economics,
有一个非常重要的层面
language and literature, and folklore.
而且里面的内容
So I would say at that time it's a very unique time for us to investigate into the Silk Road.
开始使用起来，都还是在一个学者的层面。
So that is actually the history about
其实
the
我们通
naming
过第二
of
阶
the
段的
Silk
整个
Road.
的参观啊，然后我们其实也能够知道，就是我们现在非常熟悉的丝绸之路这个词儿。
After visiting this section,
然后从这个德国
we
的
started
西部
to
分
understand
提出
how
这样的
this
一个
name
词语，到后来西方的很多的地理学家、
comes
科学
upon
家、探险家
and
等
who
等
proposed the
不断地
name.
去论
So at the beginning, I
然
would
后
say
加上我们后来自己中国
it
的
is Richthofen who first
在不断地
proposed
最后
this concept, and later there was joint efforts between the Chinese scholars and the Western scholars. Through the investigations and survey, we substantiate the name Silk Road, and this concept has well preserved until now.
无论是老人还是孩子，每个人都知道有丝绸之路这样一个词。那么这
So right now, many people
一个变化，
are well known about the
第
name
三阶段
us
要给大家介
Silk
绍
Road. Now we come to
其实就是
the
整个
third
丝绸
part
之路申遗的一个过程。
of Silk Road.
丝绸之路，
So
前面
for this section, it actually captures the procedures of the bid for Silk Road to the World Heritage status.
这慢慢开始普及，从学术的层面向一般的科普
So with the
所以在
popularity of the Silk Road, especially in the 1950s and the 1960s,
有很多人去研究
because of the frequent use of the Silk Road
张骞通西
in exchanges with foreign countries at the government level, this phrase became known to the general public.
出现了丝绸之路的地图，
And some of the publications and the television broadcasts also use the name Silk Road. This is actually captures the friendship between China and some of the neighboring countries. And we always talk about the Silk Road. That is to say, we are expanding the use of the Silk Road. But still, I think the milestone for Silk Road is that between the 80s to 90s, the UNESCO started their project, and they have put forward the vision of the Silk Road as World Heritage in its report. And they are also conducting an investigation on the Silk Road. They are also naming this Silk Road as the Silk Road Roads of Dialogue. So after Silk Road was identified as the Roads of Dialogue, that is to say, like 30 years ago, UNESCO started the scientific survey on Silk Road. The first expedition was conducted in Xi'an, so that is the road of desert. And in 1988, UNESCO launched the integral study of the Silk Roads, the Roads of Dialogue project. So this is actually a 10-year project. And this also established a cooperative relations between the researchers and the media in every stage through the organization of international expedition activities, seminars, conferences, etc. So here you could see there were many photos and talking about the expedition of the Silk Road. Many key figures and also some of the well-known archaeologists also attended the expedition of the Silk Road. So for this expedition is very important. Some of the major cultural heritage was introduced to some foreign scholars. And the second, they also have some expedition about the maritime Silk Road. So there is a designated vessel carrying all of the scholars, so they may understand the ancient maritime Silk Road. So here you could see some of the articles and the books that are capturing the travel of the second expedition, I would say the maritime expedition. And yesterday we actually holding a meeting to commemorate the 30-year anniversary of the expeditions on Silk Road. So yesterday, we also have representative from the UNESCO headquarters to attend the meeting. So because of these 5 times of the expeditions organized by UNESCO, it actually laid a solid foundation for the Silk Road into the World Heritage status. During the expedition, we would say Silk Road is a very important road. I would say a road of dialogue, road of communication to build friendly ties between China and neighboring countries. So the Silk Road is actually a a world heritage. As UNESCO already have this World Heritage program, we all know for some of the World Heritage, they only referring to one space. But the Silk Road is a route instead of one designated place. So the 5 expeditions were completed at around the 1995. And back in 2000, they started the final preparation for the bid. They consider many factors, for example, the tourist sites along the road, and start from 2003. UNESCO started the expedition in the Chinese section, and in 2006, once again, they verified the Silk Road for the China section. They conducted 2 types of investigation. On one hand, they are trying to see whether the Silk Road lines up with the World Heritage status from the perspective of concept. And later on, they identified the Silk Road can be comprising with over 20 corridors. And on June the 22nd, 2014, the Silk Road, the route network of Chang'an-Tianshan Corridor, jointly presented by China, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, was successfully inscribed on the World Heritage List. So before this corridor was inscribed on the World Heritage List, once again the UNESCO conducted an expedition. And later on, UNESCO decided the route network of this Chang'an-Tianshan corridor shall be jointly presented by 3 countries, naming the China, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. Because they think there are many cultural relics that has been unearthed from the Silk Road. And finally, on June the 22nd, UNESCO finally approved the World Heritage status of the Silk Road.
最后我们到了2014年6月22日，在第38届世界遗产大会，在卡塔尔多哈召开。最后丝绸之路就在那个会议上。
So in the World Heritage Conference, UNESCO announced this decision to inscribe the route network of Chang'an-Tianshan Corridor into the World Heritage List. So this is a short video.
丝绸之路是一个历史文化的一个存在，所以它是因为人类的交往的需要，对而出现的。然后到了
So I would say the Silk Road exists because of the people-to-people exchange and the cultural exchange between different nations.
被学界接受。 后来呢，又在政府的层面
So first, the route
进行推广，
was named,
最后
and later
把它列入到
this road was publicized
这里面是
in different sectors.
这个世界遗产的丝绸之路的。
And with over 20 years of preparations, finally, the Chang'an-Tianshan Corridor
还有很多的地方
was successfully inscribed on the World Heritage List.
另外的廊道，所以这个丝绸之路申遗，它首先已经
And right now, the UNESCO is preparing for the inscription of another section of the Silk Road.
还继续在进行。
But I would say all the scholars are continuing their studies and investigations about the Silk Road route.
丝绸之路这条路是谁走出来的？
So, as I've just said earlier, we have to know how the road is shaped and also how the Silk Road is named. So let's go to another section.
然后在丝绸之路这条路上发现的很多的珍贵的文物，而每一件文物的背后呢，它都
On the other side, we are actually presenting a variety of relics that has been unearthed from the Silk Road. On the second part and the second session, we also have a deputy curator and also a scientist, Ms. Zhou Yang, to give us some introduction about the cultural relics unearthed on the Silk Road. So, dear viewers, good morning. So, I will tell you more story about the cultural relics that has been unearthed from the Silk Road. On this site, we will display different relics, and also we will give you some introduction about these different relics. So this one is a golden plate. It's very exquisite and also have 1,600 years of history. And this piece of art is actually collected in Datong Museum. And many pieces of art are actually collected in the same museum. And it is common to see that for this gold plate was coming from the Datong Museum. You could see for this gold plate, it's very glittering. And we also have a poster to exhibit the details of the golden plate. It is not very thick, and we also have a special technique to make such a plate. They're actually putting all of the gold plate and also carved this plate into different patterns and shapes. So let's take a look on the design of this gold plate. As you can see, for this plate is actually surrounded by ivy, and also we have 3 men that is in the middle of the plate. They're riding horses, and also they're holding some of the wine vessels. And in the middle, you could see that is the what we call the god of the wine, and he's also holding a mug. He's also drinking wine, and standing next to him is another man also holding a wine vessel. So for all of these are ancient gods. They are also representing the fables of the ancient Greek. This is a very typical Greek style of this gold plate. So that is to say, for some of these items, they're actually unearthed in Datong. However, for all of these items, they're carrying the characteristics of the ancient Greek. So this also demonstrates that the exchanges between China and the western part back in the old days. So I would say the Silk Road is very common back to Wei Dynasty. As we all know, this kind of artifacts, they are with the ancient Greek style, and if these articles are found inside of China, meaning that all of these items have been existing for over thousands of years. So even though after thousands of years, you still could see it is very exquisite and beautiful for all of these pieces of art. Here I could see 3 pieces of artifacts demonstrating here. So this is another mug in light blue. And also we have a bracelet demonstrating here. So this is very similar to the bracelets that you could find in the shops. However, for all of these pieces of art, they're actually unearthed from the Han Dynasty. So for the Silk Road, we can actually divide it into 4 different periods. So for the gold plate we have just found, they're actually representing an era of the Hexi corridor. And for these 2 pieces of art, as they're unearthed in Han Dynasty, also found from Guangxi province, you could see the design of this bracelet is also showcase a combination of the Eastern and the Western design. And for this glass, by looking at the texture of this glass, I would say this kind of technique is not used in China, because it has a different look and feel as compared to the glass that we make back in that time. I believe this kind of technique is applied in the southeastern part of the world. For example, in Thailand, maybe in Cambodia. So for this natural gifts, and especially for this bracelets, I would say some of these gems may be discovered from the southeastern part of the world. And I would say all of these techniques actually contributed from the Silk Road. By opening up the Silk Road, I would say there were many merchants that coming in and out from the Silk Road. At the beginning stage, we have Zhang Qian, who are embarking on the first mission to the western regions. When he came back, he also brought different types of technologies and also different types of equipment to help us to refine our technology in creating different types of relics. And also he helped us to polish our relics.
看完了特别美的，然后我们再往这边来看，这是一个拓本吧，拓片，然后我们来看看这拓片。
So let's move on to another section.
这2件拓片其实是很让人感动的，它就像以 1900多年的一个新闻报道事件一样的，它记述了一个人的高光时刻。
So for this, these are the rubbings, the rubbings plate.
是车骑将军国舅窦宪。那个时候我们说，
And for this rubbing replica is actually
这个东西
found
呢，我们首先看看它出在哪儿？它出在蒙古国。
in the
蒙古国呢，它在20多年
year
前
of
有两个
89.
牧民，两个蒙古国的牧民下雨去躲雨，雨过天晴之后，他就发现啊，他的躲雨的那个崖壁上有字，当然他不认识这是什么字，他就是求救、求助。
And some of these
我们的
rubbings
中国的
plate
内蒙古
actually
大学
found
呢就跟咱
from
们
the
进行合作研究，
from the
发现
Inner
呢
Mongolia
这就是消失在历史
site.
中1900多年的燕然山民。我们范仲淹
And
有
also
一
you
首
could
叫
see some of the
多有一杯
inscriptions
加
that
万
actually
燕
carved
然
on
为
these
歌归
rubbings.
无尽。其实对于一个军事首领、一个军人来讲，他的功绩无外乎就两个，要么就是封狼居胥，要么就是燕然克时。这就是消失在历史中的燕然山民。燕然山民呢，我们来看他在这样的崖体上面，这样的一个崖体上面，他是在一个
So for this stone from the Notorious tomb, you could see you have different kind of like languages and also some of the patterns carved on the tomb. So from this section, you could see the expedition between China and Inner Mongolia.
可以以两个拓片的形式给展示给我们现在。那么我们如果来看
When they're discovering this kind of rubbing plates, these plates can also demonstrate some of the histories back in those times.
足北匈奴
So for the inscriptions altogether, you have 288 characters. It also talks about the
他随军
history of
随窦宪
匈奴.
然后去征战这个北匈奴，然后大捷之
And I would like to mention
写的这样。
another figure, Banbu.
从人才的角度
And after he gained the victory against
那么我们说匈
匈奴
奴一直都是
he also write out these inscriptions
汉武帝
on
在位
the
55
rubbing
年
plate.
跟匈奴搏斗了，征战了44年。
As
那么
we
在
all
这个时候
know,
呢，他就记录了一个时刻。
during the reign of
从此
Han Emperor,
就被彻底
he has been fighting against the Xiongnu for 44 days, 44 years. And for these inscriptions, it actually captures the history for the Han Dynasty in their fight against Xiongnu. So if we have a deep understanding about the history when we are looking at
其实他在这个
these
旁边有
rubbing
两个字
plates,
叫
we may
汉
have a
我们
deep
想
understanding.
可能在这个崖体上刻下了燕然山民288个字之后呢，我们的汉人的将领又在这里刻下两个字叫汉生。
I think
因为燕
after
人是匈奴人，是他们
the inscriptions were kept on these rubbings,
我打到这
they
儿
may have do some of the refinement
让人
of these rubbing plates.
就是看文物，很多时候都是让人有一种
So
邂逅的感觉
all of these relics are carrying stories.
能够对
Because if you are well known about the history, if you look at all of
真
these
实时事
cultural relics,
让我们
you have
沙漠绿洲
this kind of experiences of going back to the history.
讲高原丝绸之路
We talk about the grassland Silk Road, the maritime Silk Road,
其实
and now I would like to talk about the highland Silk Road.
文物呢已经回去了，我们做了一个高清扫描在这儿，但是没关系，我们可以来看看。
For this one, it is actually a relic from the temple.
它是出土在阿里的。有一
The
个
first, I would
有一
like
个
to
地
give you
冈
some
仁波齐
introduction about
它
the
其实距离冈仁
background.
波齐就不远了。冈仁波齐在他们的在藏族的语言体系里面，它就是一个宇宙的中心。它我们说世界上
In
有三极
Tibetan language,
和西藏。
so for this
4000多米的高
painting,
原
it
上
actually grabs the
南来北
universe.
往它可以看到4种文明。我们如果脑子里有一部世界地图的话，阿里这个地方。
So by looking at these artifacts, you can imagine yourself standing at a 4,000 meter altitude, and also you could see 4 nations from the top of the altitude. So you could understand the Central Asia history and also the Western region's history.
非常多，我们这里面